One of Brown County's most significant pieces of public art is found in the auditorium of the School District Administrative Center on State Street in New Ulm. When John Martin Socha completed his series of 3 murals in 1940, this was the city's high school, and every day for decades, students had the opportunity to be inspired by his vision of New Ulm's past.
Well, in a nutshell, John Socha studied art at the Minneapolis School of Art and at the University of Minnesota, and his day job was an art teacher at Marshall High School in Minneapolis. But probably the most important part and the connection with these murals is that he studied with Diego Rivera in Mexico in the 1920s. Now, Diego Rivera, as you know, was a famous Mexican muralist, and this was probably the biggest impact on Socha's style, because in the 1920s, mural painting became a very popular form of artistic expression in Mexico. Rivera and several other artists revolted against the private use of art. They felt art should be public. As it evolved in this country, it also became under the influence of what we now call regionalism, a style that was popularized by Thomas Hart Benton and Curry and Grant Wood were 3 of the people most famous for it. So that kind of became the sort of exaggerated figures, sort of extenuated limbs, a little bit out of proportion people, but the human being was larger than the scenery in the background. So those would really be the 2 big incomes that Socha would have picked up. And he was an accomplished muralist. He had painted about 7 murals throughout Minnesota, ones at Winona State, St. Luke's Cathedral in St. Paul, the old Federal Reserve Building in Minneapolis, St. James Episcopal Church in Minneapolis, and the chapel at Fort Snelling. The muralists were a little different. If you were an easel painter and you just could produce a painting or a watercolor, every couple of weeks you got your check. That's all that counted. A muralist was a little different. He actually had to submit a proposal. The proposal had to be approved by the community and the administration of the WPA, and then he was paid according to the progress that he was made. So it really wasn't a make-work program like the other federal arts projects at the time. So my feeling is that Socha really wanted to do this. If he took the time to research it and come up with the preliminary sketches and jump through the hoops to get the commission. He's depicting 3 scenes. The first scene is, well, I would call it the first scene because chronologically that's how it would go, is a depiction of the signing of the Travis de Sioux Treaty, which took place in 1851 near New Ulm. Socha's paintings of the signing of the treaty is a very interesting and almost an astonishing piece of work, because I've looked at some of the predecessors by Frank Meyer and Francis Millet, who I believe Millet copied Meyer, but I can't be sure of that. But anyway, 2 of the predecessors of the same treaty, where they have the Indians in full regalia, many, many Indians surrounding the scene. There's a nice platform where the official signing takes place. Socha downplays all of that and really is actually more historical correct in his rendition than Millet or Meyer were, because on the left-hand side of the painting, Socha depicts the second treaty. This was called the Barrel Treaty or the Traders' Papers Treaty. After the pomp and circumstance was done of signing away the land, which was about 24 million acres, for which the Indians received 3 cents an acre and the government sold it for $1.25. The fur traders were there, led by Henry Sibley. Fur traders were very concerned that they would not get the money that the Indians had owed them. There's kind of sort of like a charge account at the fur trade. They would charge things during the year. When the furs would come in, they would clear the balance. Well, the fur traders were very concerned that they would not get their money from the Indians. So Socha depicts really that part, the second treaty, which was equally as debilitating to the Indians as giving up their land, which I find that to be a particularly interesting piece given the time that it was done, and probably the more accurate depiction of this event, and probably if you wanted to compare it to any of the written word of the time, this is perhaps the more accurate one, because Socha, the artist, gives it equal weight. Well, the painting of the battle, well, we're not sure which battle this would be because there were several battles that were all part of the 1862 war, but this is probably one in reference to the defense of New Ulm. And here in the forefront you've got a gallant man standing up, shooting at the Indian that's falling back as he's just been hit by the rifle. And this is fairly typical of some of the illustrations that have come out of that period. There was a panorama done by John Stevens in the 1870s, which pretty much shows the white people very much in control when they were fighting back, and that's what he's picked up. It's a very stylized scene of that. Nothing in particular says New Ulm except maybe some of the buildings in the background, but he's just really emphasizing the battle there. It's interesting that they're in a wagon, because I think the wagon can kind of, which probably was not the case there, because this was a fairly settled community, but I think the wagon was probably a tip to American history and the whole idea of westward movement. So you have to have the Conestoga wagon there. Not so much that it was accurate of New Ulm at the time. It may have been, they could have had a wagon they could have pulled up as a barricade, but I doubt if it would have had the canvas top. And then the third scene is really an idealized scene of what happened as a result of white settlement, the progress of the city, because in the scene is depicted, it's a blend of the farmer and the city. There's a man in the up front with a scythe leaning on a hay bale, signifies the farmer. In the background is several cylindrical objects, meaning the mill. The train is running over the back top. You can see the smokestack coming out of the train, or it very well may be. Actually, I don't think it's a train. I think it's a smokestack symbolized of industry. Down in the corner, there's a man holding a T-square and a triangle. He's the engineer, he's the brain power, he's the education coming forth that brought out. In the background, there's a man with a planet and the surveyor, and the surveyor's transept that shows the progress going out. It's really the progress that the white man could bring to this land, sort of a carryover of the 19th century exceptionalism for the white race. And so this was kind of the coming of the promise and how this came about, and it established the city of New Ulm. I don't know directly if this was Socha's political sensibilities, because I don't know how much of a man of his time he was, but this was definitely the sensibilities of the WPA art projects. Part of the WPA art project, they wanted their artists to depict a usable past for Americans. They could look back and see that, yes, we have done great things. The Depression is a temporary setback. We are capable of great things. They wanted a usable past. So if you could look back at a moment like this, we've freed the land from the Indians. Look how we've developed the land. Look how we prospered. Look how we made proper use of the land for the manner in which it was intended for us. So this is very much the philosophy of the WPA coming back, that America worked once, America can work again. Socha may have been a little bit ahead of himself, but he had to paint to his audience down in New Ulm, and I think this is what they probably would have wanted to see. The treaty made it possible for people to spread out. The treaty made the development of New Ulm happen. They fought for it in the battle, and the promises of developing the land were kept. The area became prosperous, and that's the story that Socha tells.